Hi everybody, welcome to your manners training class, your online training class. Thank you for joining me, and I hope to provide some insight over the next few weeks into dog training, into maybe what you're already doing, provide you a little perspective from the dog's perspective. That's what I tend to do a lot of, so people have a better understanding of why things are working versus why they're not. So just a little bit of an intro. I already kind of put up a little bit of a bio just about kind of where my interests lie and what I've done a bit with dogs and who I have or have had for dogs. And I'll just kind of follow that up a little bit with just a kind of a little blurb about that. I'm going to talk as well about how dogs learn and some training techniques to use. Tonight is actually it's a super simple night. So typically it's the first night with dogs. So my manners training class, I do have dogs attend typically the first night. As in my puppy class, I don't, but in my manners class, I do. So typically the first half hour of class, I talk a little bit about who I am and what I do with dogs, a little bit about the training center, and a little bit about how dogs learn, and I leave you with really just kind of four. Usually I only get to three, but tonight I'll get to four. But yeah, 3 or 4 just things to work on at home. So yeah, just to kind of follow up, yes, I'm a vet tech, not a certified dog trainer, but trust me, I have a lot of knowledge. I am jack of all trades, master of none. But my background is primarily competitive obedience and agility. Love of all dog sports, really. I love working dogs. I love training dogs, and I've done it professionally as long as I've been a vet tech. I got into the life of training dogs professionally as well. So just to talk a little bit, because I will definitely reference some past dogs, mostly my Briar dog, in some exercises moving forward in our class. So I do have little Josie here. That's my Josie. She is, the sun rises and sets on that dog and has since the day she came into my life. She's pretty perfect. I tell her that every single day. And she was the last member of my last pack. So I did have a brother and sister pair, Briar and Bree. They were the cutest brother and sister pair. Just had a wonderful friendship. They were quite a pair for sure. And it started in my life with Briar as a puppy, so I got him as a babe at 7 weeks old. And then his sister Bree came to me when she was 2. Right on their 2nd birthday, she came to our home when her first home didn't work out, and I quickly made a choice for Bree that even though I love performance sports and training dogs for performance things, that was not a lifestyle that she was interested in. She loved the training, she loved the connection and relationship with me, but she was not a dog that really coped well or loved stressful environment of a trial situation. So I made a very early choice for her that I was not going to put that pressure on her, that was not going to be what she was about. She just had to be Bree. And she did that very well for 13 and a half years. So I lost her just in January, and I lost Briar the year prior. But they were a pretty cool pair. I probably won't reference Bree again in our time. She was in many ways my easiest dog. She didn't give me any trouble. I didn't need to use a lot of fancy techniques on her because she just didn't need them. But Briar, I'll reference him a lot. So Briar he was my black tri-male Aussie. He was by far one of my greatest teachers because he was a difficult dog to own. He was by far the most reactive dog I ever owned. But having said that, he was also the most exquisite, accurate, driven working dog that I've ever had. To date, he still holds the highest score I've ever achieved in obedience, which is 196.5 out of 200. Most accurate dog, first high-end trial dog of mine. We had multi high-end trials together over the years. He was my first agility dog, first titled agility dog. He was everything. He really helped me raise my bar in dog training in general, just in knowledge about dog training, but certainly in my own career with obedience and agility. But because he was such a great driven working dog, like this crazy pants down here, and very reactive, it made him a challenging dog to live with. And luckily I persevered, and I was directed into some great pathways of trainers that gave me some brilliant information that really helped to it helped to build a relationship in a positive way. It helped me manage a lot of his idiosyncrasies and reactivities in a very very effective, positive relationship building kind of way. Truly saved our relationship, and it was amazing. He was, because of his intense work ethic and reactivity, he was a great dog to learn from. He taught me endless lessons, and I am forever grateful for all those lessons that he brought my way. So I will reference that crazy dog once in a while. He holds such a big part of my heart, but I'm so grateful for all the ups and downs we had, because it really taught me a lot for sure. So now like I said, I have Josie. She's 9 years old, and this blur of feet and black and white crazy over here. I'll show you his face in a minute. He's got a bone. This is my 9-month-old border collie puppy. And I thought Briar was the most challenging, and in many ways he was, trust me, but this kid, he's been a lot. I went from having 3 beautifully trained, middle to older aged Aussies to 1 very busy border collie puppy. And he is my first border collie I had as a teenager and in my early 20s. She was just a basic farm dog. This kid is a well-bred, many generations of fine sheepdogs, working lines, and I specifically wanted a dog like that because he's my next agility dog, and I wanted one of very sound mind and body, very high work ethic, and not too hard on the eyes. I wanted a pretty one too. So that brought me to Riggs, and he was a lot as a baby puppy. Like, whoa, like, wow, busy, fast, busy. I still think Briar is still going to be one of my greatest teachers, but without his lessons, I would never have survived puppyhood with Riggs. I would never have survived. And I'm going to share, I'm sure, with you along the way some of my trials and tribulations with this puppy, in how training works and things that I've always recommended, and that I certainly did with this guy. But yeah, I usually throw a few personal stories about things that went wrong for me and how I made them right and stuff like that. So let me show you his face. Here, buddy. I know that bone is really good. Come here. Can you sit? Riggs, sit. Good boy. Come here. So this is my puppy. Look, buddy, look up here. Look, see me? That's both dogs. Yeah, they're cute. Cute dogs. There you go, bud. Josie, there's other bones around. So these are the dogs that I currently have, and that's the story on that. Obedience and agility is kind of my thing. Nothing else that I need to talk to you about that way. So I'm going to talk about how dogs learn, talk about some training technique, and share with you some things that I use to communicate with dogs effectively so that they know right versus wrong. Grab some treats. Should be interesting with the 2 of them here. So ready to go, aren't we? Dogs learn primarily through operant and classical conditioning. Those are fancy terms for very simple things. Also, I will, the majority of things that I talk to you about each week, I will upload some handouts. Those things that I don't have on a PDF to upload, I will take a photo of and add to an album labeled additional handouts. This is just information that I've gathered over the years that helps support my lessons, that gives good advice. I haven't updated a lot of training material because training techniques don't really truly change for the basics. So I've got some solid stuff and information that I'll share with you guys over the next few weeks. So operant and classical conditioning. Operant conditioning is behavior is learning through reinforcement. So behaviors that are reinforced will be repeated. Period. End of story. It's important for you to remember that. It's probably the biggest factor in training that is so important going forward. You need to understand that behaviors are reward based or reward driven. So behaviors that are reinforced will be repeated. It's important to know what dogs consider to be reinforcing. Food, toys, access to people and interesting smells, petting, praise. Food, toys tend to be the highest, and those are tend to be the highest value. But dogs, this border collie, he's very toy motivated, moderately food motivated, enough food motivated. This kid here is super food motivated, more than toys. I had to work at getting her toy motivated for the sports that I wanted her to play. He is super toy motivated. And more than any dog that I've ever had, he's super praise motivated. Like, wow, most dogs aren't that praise motivated, but he loves to have interaction from me. He's a real soft dog, so he appreciates any physical touch and feedback that I give him, more so than most dogs. That's not normal for dogs. He's not normal. But it does work, and I do use that a little bit as a reinforcement for him. But for the most part, food and toys, okay? Access to new people can be also very rewarding, so you need to be mindful of that, but I'll talk about that a bit more going forward in our lessons. So, reward the stuff you like. Reinforcement builds behavior. Classical conditioning is about how dogs learn by association. It's how they piece things and put things together. So, they don't automatically understand verbal cues that we give or body language, but after repeated pairings with behaviors that we've reinforced, it becomes learned. So they don't understand English, but they will learn to understand verbal cues that we give them based on behaviors that we've offered reinforcement for. So they've learned those behaviors, and then we pair them together with certain words. That's how they put it together. That is operant and classical conditioning and how they work together. Those are the primary theories for training. So what is also important is to have keep things very black and white for your dogs. I'm going to switch dogs. Come here, Joes. I know. Where'd you go? Out. When I say switch dogs, I did an earlier puppy class video, and I used my Josie puppy for that. So I'll use Riggs for this one. So it's important to have a marker system. So a very clear system to your dogs to let them know when they've earned reward, when they've done a good job versus when they haven't. So we use something called a reward marker. I love this little device. It's called a clicker. Love it. It sounds like this. Oh, I don't want to click him for just staring at me. Clicked him for staring away from me. That is unrelated to anything to do with this. It has to do with things we're doing in our other training life. So again, a clicker just sounds like that, and after repeated pairings with a food reinforcement, it becomes a significant marker to dogs that you like what they're doing. So it can help you with your timing, be a little bit more accurate in marking the moments that they earned reinforcement. Again, once they understand how the clicker works, that when they hear that sound, they get a reinforcement, becomes significant, you use it as a training tool going forward. Having said that, you can also use a verbal marker. Yes is a word that I tend to use, and a lot of trainers tend to use. It is something different than your regular praise jargon, like good dog, good boy, good girl. It's specific, and it's consistently paired with a food reinforcement, makes it more noticeable in your vocabulary than those other words. So because of the operant and classical conditioning, that is actually classical conditioning, kind of putting that together, the sound of your voice, your yes word or your clicker, and that food reinforcement makes it significant to your dog. So yes or clicker to mark the correct behaviors. Clickers you could probably pick up at a pet store. I really like these ones. They're called an iClick. I get them from dogwise.com. It's where I order the majority of my training material, my literature, and some training supplies. It's a great spot. Or you could buy it, like I said, you could buy one at a pet store, I'm sure. So as important as it is to let your dogs know when they perform correctly, I encourage you as well to use a no reward marker. So a sound or a word that indicates to your dog that they should do something different, that they should interrupt or stop what they're doing, that you're going to interrupt their behavior. So they're, counter surfing, they're into the garbage, they're doing anything else that you don't want them to do. See how my puppy looks out? Whoa, mama, I didn't do anything at all. So see his quick reaction to that? Rig story number 1. As a baby dog, I could till the cows came home. He did not care, but I needed to make it significant for him. Hey is another one. See, he notices that. But you're doing a good job, though. You're doing a good job. You're perfect. With your feet. See, my marks a moment that I don't like. What a good boy. But and heys are good. So with this fella, as a crazy baby dog at 10 weeks old when he came home, I would say or hey to him. He could care less. What's important about these no reward markers or sounds that you're using is that you follow through. Your dog will not take you seriously if you say and they get to follow through with the behavior you're trying to interrupt. So for this guy, he was into everything. I would literally have to come up to him and go, hey. And he'd be like, oh, I'm not supposed to chew this? But I'd have to get right into his space. Hey. Right? And I was like, whoa. And I go, okay, good boy. Good job, buddy. No, he's a very soft little fella. What's wrong, buddy? He says, why are you saying hey, I'm being a good boy. But it's important. Like, you can say words till you're blue in the face, but if they don't think that you're going to follow through with that, or you don't make it significant to them, then there's no point. So make sure you follow through. It's super important. Your clicker or your yes gets a cookie. Your or your hey gets a you follow through and interrupt that behavior so that they know that you're looking for them to disconnect from what they're doing. The alternative to using a negative reward or a no reward marker like that, you can use a positive interrupter. We often use pop pop. I haven't used it a ton with him, but I use it a bit. Pop pop. Oh, we did a spin. No. So he doesn't really know pop pop. He knows to respond to it, but I haven't actually done this with him. Pop pop. Good. So what you do is you say that little high-pitched pop pop, and then you just toss a treat for them. So it just teaches them that there's a sound, another sound that indicates they should come to you, and they're going to get a cookie. Pop pop. Yes. Whoa, we almost missed that one. All right. Okay, so we've got reward things, clicker, yes, treat, and hey are your no reward markers. You can use a positive pop pop associated with a treat to also interrupt things. Something to think of going forward, in my opinion, the most common no reward marker or sound that dogs hear when they're behaving badly, the most common word they hear from their people is actually their name. Try to change that, okay? Their name should be positive. We're going to cover that in a minute. You want them to look at you and engage with you when you call their name. If you're using it negatively, if they're always hearing their name and then you're cranky at them, or you're, throwing them in their crate because they're bad or whatever, they will be less likely to connect with you when you call their name. So very important. Hays, pop-ups, positive, but no name for bad dog stuff. Come up with a different name. I actually, for this guy, because there was a lot of bad things, there was as in Hays. I also I have a bad dog name for him, Mister, and I kind of growl it out at him. What are you doing, Mister? So sometimes I've added for this guy. He's the only dog I've had that has had a bad dog name. But if I just don't want to be going I use that a lot. So he's very herdy and like stalking my Josie dog. So sometimes instead of like an or a hey, I'll use like a rough kind of like mister to just get his attention, like, and then I'll call him in a positive way to me, but just to break his little fixation on my other dog if he's going into kind of herding mode. Sometimes, okay buddy, good boy. Sometimes I'll use his bad dog name. So that's it in a nutshell. What I'm going to do, I'm going to actually swap out dogs again for a moment. I'm going to put Josie through just a few little paces, show you how the clicker training works a little bit, and then I'll do a couple demos of things for you to work on. Babies, Josie, Biggs, Biggs, Biggs. Oh, there you go. That's a good boy. You know. So just to show you kind of quickly how you can use your clicker to mark and reward behaviors. What I'm going to do with Josie is I'm going to put her through several things. So when you're first teaching something, you're going to use a high rate of reinforcement for small increments towards a behavior. Josie's a trained dog, so her criteria are higher. I'm going to ask her to do kind of multiple things before I pick a few spots where I will click and treat her. But just so you see a little bit about how training works. Joe's heel, flat, sit, girl, stand. Nice job. That was hard. You thought I was going to add something else, didn't ya? Good girl. Just come. Good girl. Around. Stay. Stay. Just come. Around. Heel. Flat. Good girl. Flat. Girl. Stand. Good girl. All done. Pew. Good job, girlie. All right, so just a few little spots. Again, I got her to do maybe multiple behaviors, or I clicked and treated what I considered maybe the harder behavior. Standing from a sitter down, I consider a bit harder, so I usually click and treat that. She doesn't usually anticipate that one, so when she nails it, I think that's pretty good for her. Good girl, Jojo. Do heel, heel. Oh, you're crooked. That's better. Touch. Good girl. Whoops. Okay. Yeah, I dropped one somewhere, I think, Joe's. Anyhow, so you got to see a little bit of how clicker training works. Oops, sorry, Joe's. Clicker training works in marking moments that you want to offer your dog a paycheck. So what we're going to start with, what I'd like you to start with your young dogs, is rewarding eye contact. If you have already attended my online puppy training class or another puppy training class of some sort, and you already have this behavior underway, I want you to raise your criteria sooner rather than later. I will discuss criteria a bit more specifically next week, but you should be, let's just say you should be rewarding more than just the glance. So think back to the puppy class when I talked about criteria. That's what I want you to be thinking about moving forward, those that already have an established behavior with this. If this is brand new learning for your young dog, you're going to reward just a glance. So again, what I like least about online training is that my demos aren't as, they're just not as great because I'm working with dogs that are trained rather than dogs that aren't. So what I want you to do for the attention is I want you to mark and reward any glance that your young dog gives to you, all right? Except if you already have this behavior underway, I want you to raise your criteria. But if it's brand new, you're going to reward just a glance. If you've been away from training for a little bit in your back, you can lower your criteria a bit just to get them back on the page of what we're doing. So again, I don't worry too much about how quickly they look or how long they hold eye contact, but any glance will do. Try to refrain from continuing to repeat your dog's name if they don't look at you. If they do not look at you and you just continue to call their name, they're going to learn that there's nothing significant that goes along with their name. Remember, they put things together, classical conditioning. They learn based on reinforcement. So if they're not getting reinforced for anything in association with their name and it just becomes noise, you're not working, you're not getting anywhere. So You're better off, if your puppy or young dog will not look at you, you're better off to wait it out. Keep your puppy on a leash, keep them close, stand there, do your dishes, do something, and when they get frustrated and they look up and check in with you, mark and reward. So you use your yes or your clicker and treat and reward their natural choice to check in with you, even if you didn't call their name. You may need to create that behavior from scratch if they're not in the habit of, or don't know their name, or aren't in the habit of looking at you in response to their name. But if your dog does look at you when you call their name, here, Jones. Good girl. It's hard for me to get this little dog to look away from me. Trust me, she did not come out of the box this way. Josie has many, probably tens of thousands of hours of training into her, miles and trials and travels and all kinds of stuff. So I understand that she may make it look easy, but there is a lot invested in the behavior that I have today. So she's looking at me, I'm going to click and treat her. She's not going to look away, especially because she knows she's working. Joe's girl. So she's just continuing to stare at me. She'll look back at me without me asking. Good. What I'd like you to do for technique, I'd like you to keep your food behind your back. Pockets are okay. I store my food in my pocket, but when I'm training stuff, I keep it in my hands. I tend to keep it out of sight, either at my side or behind my back. With new dogs that are learning, I'd be more tempted to keep it behind my back. And I reward from alternate sides, not always the same. So Josie's just continuing to look at me. So I'm continuing to mark and treat her. If she were to look away, I would call her again. And when she looked back at me, I can't even make her look away. I would reward her. I can't not reward her. She's perfect. If I haven't mentioned it already, Josie's perfect. So again, I understand that your beginning behavior may not look like this, but do be patient. Set your puppy up for success. Make it easy, distraction free. Keep your leash on. Step on your leash. You have both hands. Don't let them go too far. If they chew on the leash, let them tantrum out. Take a break. Try again. Reward any glimpse of eye contact. It does not have to be staring like this little dog does. That's your goal in the long term. But Josie's attention too started with just a glance. That's your entry point. And then you build from there. So reward the glance with your click or your yes and food reward. Hopefully your dogs already know how to sit. Typically what I do in a class setting is I will ask the class, raise your hand if your dog does not know how to sit. Usually nobody raises their hand. Good girl. But if somebody does, I pick that dog for the demo. So I suspect all the dogs know how to sit, but I will show you quickly how to train that. Jojo. Good girl. Typically, stand. Typically, in a standing position, I'll do it with food in front of their nose as a lure. Nose up. Yes. Their bum hits the ground. A couple of things that will happen in dogs that don't already know how to do this. They may just back up. They may jump or paw. Those are probably the only two things that they'll do. Either jump and paw or they'll just walk away. Keep them on leash if you need to keep them more focused. If they tend to just back up, I would be tempted to just put not pressure and not pushing them, but just kind of put my hand on the rear end to discourage them from backing up. Take the path of least resistance. Okay, Joes. Take the path of least resistance. Do not push or force your dog into any of these positions. That will not work. It is not fair. They are not learning. Again, any pressure that I apply to dogs is simply pressure. It's to encourage them to take the path of least resistance rather than fight and push against me. Any force applied is just going to create resistance from your dog and you'll get nowhere. So if you have to do something to prevent your dog from backing up, either practice it in a corner or put your hand just at the rear end to prevent the back up. Do not force them down into a sit. But when you raise that head up, the bum has no place to go but down, typically. Okay, Dodo. That is a good girl. Yes. Josie's my queen. She's a good girl. Thank you, good girl. It's more fun when we do it in the training hall, isn't it? Oh, I know. All right, so that's your sit. I will show you as well down. That can be a little trickier. Couple of ways that there's a few things I do when I teach down. I will teach it with a lure. So I'll show you that with Josie. I'll show you a couple different ways to lure with Josie. And I also reward my dog's natural choice to lie down often. And I do that because of all the behaviors my dogs know, lie down is my favorite. Love a dog that knows to settle. I actually create down as my default behavior for my dogs. So a default behavior is I'm not sure what I should be doing right now. Yeah, let's lay down. Some people will create a default sit. I like a default down. And I did that, again, not by mistake. I did that by creating a lot of value for that position. Keep in mind that young dogs that are learning how to lie down, they're going to struggle with it. Probably one of the biggest reasons that dogs will struggle with finding their down position is because we're always giving treats for sit. Always. Sit's simple. They get that just like that. So your sit rewards, if you're trying to focus a bit more on your downs, your sit rewards should come only for doing a sit stay or a sit maybe in a difficult position or like a difficult environment or something that is kind of raising your criteria. But yeah, if your dog is already pretty well versed on sit, you can definitely reel in the treats on the sit. Don't hand them out so much. It will get them thinking about going to other positions. And so, for instance, you saw that Josie just lied down over here by herself. Again, that is the creation of a default down. I've given all of my dogs over the years a very high value for lying down on their own. She did not lie down based on me saying it repeatedly. She didn't even sit when I said it repeatedly in conversation with you guys. But she has that understanding that, all right, we're in a talking period, we're gonna wait here for a bit. My best chance at reward is to lie down. And that was based on how I trained her from the beginning. As a puppy, I created lots of value for that down position. Good girl, Joes. So yeah, a couple things I do. I reward lots of natural choices for down. It's super helpful if you have that marker system in place, like your clicker or your verbal yes, because then even if you're not right on top of your dog, you can say yes, and you may not have your clicker on you, but you can say your yes to your dog, gather a treat, and toss it to them. Even if they have moved out of position by the time they get the reward, the information came to them at the right time. Do the best that you can. So I'll show you a couple of ways to lure them into down. Here, Joes. Wait. So from a sit position for most dogs, luring sort of down their chest and out like an L. Yes, good girl. Some dogs, some dogs, when you lure down their chest, you almost need to push that treat back between their front legs to encourage them to sort of fold back. Yes, good girl. The other way I like to train a down is to lie down from a stand position, which looks like this. This is actually my favorite way to do it. I like a dog that will understand they don't have to sit to lie down. So I work on this one a lot with my young dogs. Stand, Joes. Good girl. So this food lure is going to go diagonally. I'm going to feed her just for a sec. Diagonally back towards her front legs. Okay, so see how that creates a nice fold back. She held it out in a bow position for a second. Good girl, what a nice Jojo. And not all dogs will fold back really well. I don't know, I think it's awkward for some, or maybe they just don't understand it. But I do work at it. And sometimes you may just get, that bow position to start. Record that to start. If Josie was brand new at learning down and she put her elbows to the ground and kept her rear end up, I still would have fed that if it was a new behavior for her. And I would have fed that for a little while. Like, I say a little while, a session or two, and then I would have withheld reward until she laid her bum down, and she would have. They all do eventually. But sometimes you need to reward little tiny increments along the way before you get that full picture. Same with when you're luring them down from a sit. Sometimes, you know, I've met dogs over the years that they're so reinforced for sit, they can't be convinced to go into another position. And sometimes you just have to reward them when their elbows buckle a little bit and their shoulders go down. You start with that. The other thing for anybody who has smaller dogs, some smaller dogs are really hard to get into a down position. This is going to be a really awkward demo with Josie, but I will do my best to attempt it. So with smaller dogs, the technique that I often use involves, Josie, just come here, involves kind of luring them underneath your leg. So it's going to be, yes, yeah, she did it all right. Good girl. So it's just teaching them to, and again, with very little verbal prompts or anything, it's just teaching them to follow a little treat under your leg, to take that path of least resistance. If they try to hop over your leg, try to prevent that. Either keep them on a leash or hold them by their collar. Remind them that you have food. Yes. Same with that. In the beginning, depending on your dog, you may only get part of them under there. You may have to feed them under your leg even before they lie down, just for investigating and trying to find their way. Don't always feel like you have to get that full picture right away. You can take little steps towards the bigger picture for sure. So that's your down. I don't tend to say any verbal for that one until my getting them into position is pretty smooth, until I can lure them there with very little question from my dog and it's fairly smooth on my part. Then I will start, I will start giving them that verbal at the commitment point. So before, not while they're just standing and looking at me, before they're fully in position, but once I feel like they're committed. Down. Oh. Good girl. My aw was, I used the word flat for down, not down. Come here, babe. Flat. Girl. Okay. Sit. Sit. Flat. Good. So once I see that my dog is starting to commit to position, I will say my down word so that they can associate those things together. The last thing I'm going to leave you with is a sit stay, and I'm not going to do a ton of reward. Josie's gotten a lot of free treats tonight for things that she knows how to do well, so I won't do a ton of rewarding. But what I will start with is just a quick stay demo. Josie, heel, heel, stay. I'm going to look for my puppy outside for a minute. Stay. Oh. He was napping in the corner. Hi, buddy. Stay. So I typically do this demo in a big training room, and I go across, I leave her on a stay and I go across to the other side of the room. Everybody wants this first stay. People want a lot of distance. People want consistency. People want their dogs to have a solid stay. Trust me when I say this is not where stay starts. This is where you will grow to be. People tend to want to jump for the glory of going a long distance away from their dog. If you want a solid stay, your dog needs to understand how to stay when you are close to them. This is where it begins. This is the smaller step towards the bigger behavior. Stay. I have super solid stays in my dogs. Are they 100%? Probably not in all circumstances, but they're 99.5. I like impulse control in dogs. I really want to trust my stay, so I spend a lot of time teaching it solid, nice foundation. The foundation is key. It's key for anything. So there are really three things, you stay. There are really three things that you're dealing with when you're working on stay. Duration, distance, and distraction. Trust me when I say duration is the first criteria you should work on, which means you stay fairly close to your dog. You work on a solid understanding of the stay behavior, that they keep in that position until you tell them to move. If they are moving before you tell them they're finished, they do not completely understand what stay means. Stay begins here, close to your dog. What a good girl. Yes. Stay. I typically don't do a ton of rewarding Joes for stays that are fairly simple for her, but she's gotten lots of free cookies tonight, so here we are. So what I will do, I'm going to just break her away for a second and set it up again. Okay, Joes, what a good girl. Do a spin. Wow, do a twist. Oh, that's not, yeah, that's a twist. Go through. Woo, what a good job. Touch. Woo. So staying close is key. I'm going to now kind of show you the training technique for the stay. You're going to stay fairly close like I showed you. When you go to reward your dog, do not release your dog out to you for the treat. Don't do that. Go to them. Give them the food reward for the position you want them to be rewarded for. In that moment, reward. Repeat your stay, step back. If your dog is to move at any time during the stay, it is important that you put your hands on them. Do not be rough, but be firm. Put them back to the very spot that they were sitting in. So I'm going to try to demo that this way with Josie. See you here? Yeah, come here, Josie. That's a good girl. Here. Way to good girl. Here, move forward just a bit. Good job. Oh, how perfect are you. Stay. So, if this is brand new for your dog, moving away from them on a stay, you don't want to go very far. If I had a leash on her, it would be about a half a leash length. When you reward, step into your dog, offer food reward, stay. You would use your yes cue as well, your yes marker. Yes. Stay. If your dog is to move, it should look like this when you replace them. Hands to their collar. Good girl. Do you see how Josie replaces herself in the very spot that she moved from? She should do that no matter what distance she moves from. Good girl. Stay. So even when I moved her out a little bit further, she knew how many paces she moved forward, so she knew how many paces she had to go back to be replaced. Yes, good girl. Stay. I guess I'm using my yes instead of my clicker for this one. Again, stay fairly close, keep it short and sweet. If they move, put them back. Do not offer a food reward immediately after you put them back. Wait at least, stay, at least 5 or 10 seconds before you go in and offer a food reward again. And when you are all finished your stay exercise, make sure you release them with a verbal release that lets them know they can move and they're all done and free. If your dog is hesitant to move, you can toss a treat for them to go get. I don't do that every time, maybe once in a blue. Actually, I never do it. But it's something that you can do if you need to encourage them to move. Yes. Josie's like, this is cool. I used to have to do really a lot harder stays. Stay. And then when I'm all done, okay, good girl. I always move my dog out of position. Do a flip. Woo. Right here. Do another flip. Woo. Ta-da. Oh, is that a good dog? I always move my dog out of position. Let them know that they're free, they're all done, they can move freely again. So, your stay, it's an equation. As long as the dog holds position, they earn reward from you. You step in, reward, repeat your stay, step back. Do not be tempted to go too far. Trust me. If you get some solid duration, your distance will come very easily, but your dog really has to understand what it is that you want. If they move, very important, hands on collar, not their leash, not hey, come on back. No. Hands right on their collar. I prefer to do that forward physical kind of pressure and put them back. You do not do it with force, but it's just a constant pressure to put them back. You're the fun police. That's the consequence. That's how behavior's made, consequence versus reward. So reward for position, the consequence is you're going to put them back if they move. Make sure they hold position until you offer a release word, like, okay, all done, free dog. Those of you who have multiple dogs, if there's anyone, make sure, you can also teach them to release by just their name. So I've had multiple dogs for many years, and I will, they are only released if I have a group of dogs set up on a stay. I can release them one at a time by their name. The others will still hold their stay. See, it's that default down I'm talking about. That comes from rewarding your natural downs. Do it. All right. I hope this is enlightening, insightful, helpful. Please post videos, questions, inbox me, anything. I'm here to help. Thanks, guys. I'll see you next week.